In chapter 21, Jesus sends two of his disciples in a village near Jerusalem, predicting that right away they'll find an ass and a colt tied nearby, which he orders them to untie and bring to him. If anyone tries to stop you, he says, tell them the Lord needs them, and they'll be sure to let you go ahead, thereby fulfilling the words spoken by the prophet that the king will come unto the daughter of Zion sitting on an ass and a colt. When Jesus finally enters the city sitting on the ass and colt, many people lay their clothes before him on the road, while others put down branches that they've cut down from nearby trees. And the people start shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna, which means the one who delivers now. So they're shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. In Jerusalem, Jesus goes into the temple and casts out all those that are buying and selling, and he overthrows the money changers' tables, telling them, it is written, my house shall be called the house of prayer, but you've made it a den of thieves. He then proceeds to heal all the blind and the lame that come to him. The next morning, he's very hungry, and making his way back to the city, he comes across a fig tree, but with no fruit on it, only leaves, and he proclaims, let no fruit grow out of you ever again, and immediately the tree withers away. His disciples marvel at this, and he tells them that with faith they could even order a mountain in their way to be removed and be cast into the sea, and he assures them that anything they ask for in prayer they'll receive. Later in the temple, the chief priests and elders come to him to ask him by what authority he teaches the things he teaches. He tells them that he'll reveal this as long as they first answer him whether the baptism of John was from heaven or was it of men. But the elders know that if they answer from heaven, he'll then say, then why didn't you believe? But if they answer of men, then the people who consider John to be a prophet might revolt against them. So they take the safe route and say, we can't tell, and he tells them in return that he also cannot tell by what authority he does what he does. He then goes on to question the elders with a parable about a man with 2 sons, who asks each one of his sons to do some work for him in his vineyard. The first son flat out refuses, but not long after regrets his answer and promptly goes to work, while the second son, who answers his father that he will work, in the end decides not to work. Jesus asks the elders which of these sons they think has done the will of his father. They answer the first. So he tells them that the tax collectors and harlots will enter the kingdom of heaven before they ever do. John came to you out of righteousness, but you didn't believe, whereas the tax collectors and harlots did believe. Jesus then tells them another parable, that of a landowner who planted a vineyard and built a winepress and a tower, and then let the whole thing out to caretakers when he went off in a faraway country. And when the time of the harvest came about, he sent some servants to collect. But the caretakers beat the servants and then killed them. And when he sent more servants, they beat and killed them too. Until he finally sends his son, who will surely be respected, he thinks. But they, hoping to inherit the place, kill the son as well. Jesus then asked the elders and priests, so what do you think the landowner will do when he finally returns? They answered that he'll destroy those evil people and replace them with caretakers who'll finally give him his fruits. Jesus then goes on to predict that God will take the kingdom from them and give it to a nation that could bring forth the fruits in their seasons. Here seemingly predicting the passing of the spiritual torch from the people of Judah to Christians. After hearing these parables, the chief priests think of how they might get rid of him, but they can't quite yet because of the multitudes that hang around him, who truly believe him to be a prophet. Jesus begins chapter 22 with a parable, this time comparing the kingdom of heaven to a certain king who was arranging a marriage for his son. He sent his servants out to gather those he had invited as guests, but nobody would come. He then sends out other servants, stressing to those invited that there is a sumptuous feast all ready and waiting for them. But they ignored them and went their own way, some to their businesses and others to their farms, while others yet mistreated the king's servants, even sometimes going so far as to kill them. So the king in turn had them killed and burned down their cities. So he now sends his servants into the streets to gather all the people they could find. And they fill up the wedding hall, and the king comes to meet the guests, but finds a man there not dressed in the proper attire. He has the man bound up and sent out into the outer darkness, where Jesus says there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. After this parable, the Pharisees sent out some of their disciples to try to entangle Jesus in his own words. They first try to boost him up with flattery, and then ask him if it's lawful to give tribute unto Caesar. He says, "Why do you tempt me, you hypocrites?" and then tells them to bring him a coin, and ask him whose image is on that coin, which they answer, Caesar. Then render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. Later, the Sadducees, who don't believe in the resurrection, ask him about Moses, who said that if a man dies having no children, his brother shall marry his wife, and give her children. And they recount a tale of a man who died, and then the wife married his brother, who also died, and then married the next brother. And this goes on 7 times, and then she dies. So the Sadducees ask, in the resurrection, which brother shall have her as a wife? But Jesus tells them that they don't understand Scripture, nor the power of God. For in the resurrection no one marries, but all are as the angels of God in heaven. Keeping with the theme of the resurrection, Jesus then quotes God, saying, "I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob," explaining to them that God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. Then one of the Pharisees, who happens to be a lawyer, asks him which is the greatest commandment. And Jesus boils down the whole of the law into 2 commandments, the first being to love God with all your heart and soul and mind, and the second to love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus then asked the Pharisees who they think the Christ is, whose son is he? They answer, the son of David. And Jesus asked them how that's possible when David is quoted as calling him his Lord. If David calls him his Lord, how is he his son? No one's able to answer him, and no one asks him any more question after that. In chapter 23, Jesus reproaches the priestly elite, whereas 14 chapters earlier, in chapter 9, in the 9 of Wands, the same card, the priestly elite reproaches Jesus. Jesus speaks to the multitudes, telling them of the scribes and Pharisees who sit in the seat of Moses, and that even though they themselves don't practice what they preach, the people are to nevertheless do what the priests bid them to do. What these priests do, he says, they do so that they could be seen by others, with their broad phylacteries, and their love for the best seats in the synagogue and at feasts, and their love of being greeted as rabbi. Jesus warns the people that they shouldn't aim to be greeted as rabbi, for there is only one master, and that is Christ. Nor should they be called Father, for there is only one Father in heaven. Instead, those that are great are those that serve. Those that humble themselves will be exalted, while those that exalt themselves will be abased. Jesus cries, "Woe unto the Pharisees and scribes, hypocrites, because they themselves cannot enter heaven. They prevent others from entering too. And when they convert others, the converts then become twice the children of hell than they are. And they value the gold of the temple more than the temple itself. Those that swear by the temple swear by it, and by him that dwells within it. And those that swear by heaven swear by the throne of God, and the one who sits upon the throne. Woe to the scribes and Pharisees who make the outside of the cup look clean, but inside it's full of extortion and excess. They should first clean the inside, so that the outside too could be made clean. They are like white sepulchres, beautiful to see from outside, but inside are full of dead men's bones. And they like to build tombs for the prophets of old, but had they been alive then, they would have been their persecutors and killers. Jesus calls them serpents and vipers who won't be able to escape hell's damnation. Behold, he says, I sent you prophets and wise men and scribes, who you will kill and crucify, like you did Abel all the way to Zacharias. Jesus cries about Jerusalem that kills her prophets, and that how he wanted to gather her children like a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but they didn't allow it. Your house is left desolate, and you won't see me until you say, Blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord.